Well, thank you, Rahul, and it's really an honor to be sharing a panel with these two distinguished panelists. It's great to be in City Council, and all my friends are in City Council. I didn't know you all got elected to City Council. Well, we've been told to be brief, and I think it's appropriate because there's a lot of expertise in this room. I know, looking around, there are people who have deep knowledge about the things that Nation and Wendy and I are talking about today. And when I reflect on the book I wrote in 2006 called Unlikely Utopia, it was a bit of a cheeky title, I admit. Irony is, of course, one of those great Canadian trays. And you have to ask yourself, though, I mean, was that just so way over the top? And actually, are we here in Toronto at ground zero of a clash of civilizations that Samuel Huntington, the Harvard professor, wrote a book about 20 years ago? You know, are we sleepwalking our way to Armageddon, where it will just be the war of all against all? Are we becoming a city of solitudes? Different cultural groups, retreating into ethnic enclaves or ghettos. Why? Because they want to, or because of discrimination and racism, poverty? Is diversity really our strength, as the motto proclaims, or is it a weakness? Of course, you know, 3/4 of people living in the GTA are first or second generation immigrants. 47% in Toronto are visible minorities, and visible minority defined by Stats Canada famously excludes Aboriginal people. I never was able to figure that out. So in fact, we're probably a majority of minorities. But if diversity in fact is a strength, then I think I'd go public and start raising money, because if we all then are going to be so successful with diversity as such a strength, then this place is going to be the greatest city on the planet. Everyone will recognize it. But if we're not, and it's going to be the war of all against all, then we're going to be the canary in the mine on the bottom of the birdcage. And then everybody else better watch out. Diversity covers a lot of dimensions. It's beyond multiculturalism. It's ethnicity, religion, migration status, Aboriginal identity, gender, sexuality. It's a long list, and the list is probably going to grow. It will not get shorter. I don't have enough time to discuss how all these groups are doing, statistically speaking, or how they're perceived by a random sample of Canadians. In fact, we're even losing some data in this country. There is a increasing difficulty to have empirical facts about the kinds of things that we'd want to know are going on. Stats Canada being cut back, National Household Survey is 68% response rate. The 32 didn't are the people we need to hear from. Our Prime Minister says this would be committing sociology. I've been committing sociology since kindergarten. And I'm going to continue to commit sociology even if they make it illegal. I actually wonder what the mandatory minimum will be, Wendy, if it's actually put in the criminal code. It's an offense. In the meantime, I can't give you a totally comprehensive picture. I can tell you that we are not, in spite of my cheeky title, a utopia. We haven't got perfect equality. We don't have perfect inclusion. We have, however, come a long way since the Chinese head tax, since the internment of the Japanese Canadians during World War II that ultimately gave us this wonderful foundation that's our host tonight, the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. We've come a heck of a long way since None is Too Many, which was our policy about Jews fleeing Europe in the 1930s. And we don't have anti-Semitic riots in Christie Pits anymore. I'd like to say we've come a long way since the last Indian First Nations residential school was closed in 1996, but that would be overstating it. The history of racism, prejudice, discrimination in this country runs deep, and its eradication is very much a work in progress. But it's a work in progress. Where's my note here? So there's some progress. The official policy of multiculturalism and recognition of diversity as our strength are aspirational values of the Canadians. They're not realities manifested in every aspect of social or economic life, but the fact that they are among our most widely held aspirations is noteworthy. And after all, the word multiculturalism in Europe, in most countries, is a bad word. Although Canadians fall short of their expressed ideals around diversity, these ideals now comprise an integral part of the Canadian identity. When we survey people about Canadian symbols, multiculturalism ranks right up there with hockey. Here in Toronto, given the way the Leafs are playing, multiculturalism is probably ahead of hockey. When it comes to the perception of immigrants, Canadians are much more likely to see foreign-born as contributing to the Canadian economy. They help the economy grow. They don't take jobs away from other Canadians or ones who are native Canadians. They reject the myth that immigrants are more likely than the Canadian-born to be committing crime. These numbers are very different than you get in other countries. Now, these attitudes, of course, are not universally held, but they are majority views, and they've been majority views for at least the last 10 or 15 years in Canada. We underwent a big change in the 1990s. And let me tell you, the attitudes do stand out from what you find in Europe and in the United States. There is one point, however, that causes the Canadians a lot of anxiety about multiculturalism, about immigration. And it's a question we've been putting for a long time, and they're concerned about the speed with which new Canadians are adopting Canadian values. So what are these Canadian values that they're talking about? Well, we didn't probe it, but in having done research for 30 or 40 years, I think what we're talking about is newcomers' acceptance of gender equality and of social diversity. And we want it to happen, or seen to be happen, more quickly. Now, we've got 250,000 people coming here every year, and asking them to integrate overnight is asking a lot. Previous waves over the last 2 or 3 centuries took a lot longer to integrate into Canada than the current group is doing. In practical areas of school and work, when you look at how immigrants and their children are doing, it's kind of a mixed bag of results. The OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, does a thing every 3 years called the Program of International Student Assessment. I don't know, now it's 30, 40, 50, 70 countries, measuring how kids do in literacy and numeracy and so on. Canadian immigrants and first and second generation Canadian students outperform those who've been here 3 generations or more. They may not have been all Protestants, but they sure brought the Protestant ethic, right? Now, so educated, we've heard also about kids doing well in school, but mom and dad aren't doing as well as they should be doing in the employment market. And we're bringing in people now who are better educated than previous waves of immigrants, so it's even more cloying. Better educated people not getting jobs to the level that their qualifications suggest they should get. The doctor driving a taxi is a reality. I met him the other day in Calgary, and he is not alone, nor is his wife. Efforts are underway to speed the recognition of foreign credentials. A lot of these are provincial jurisdiction. Efforts to help newcomers connect into professional networks, TRIAC was referred to earlier. Trying to break barriers to employment for the thousands of educated, motivated people who arrive here each year. Another work in progress with a long way to go. When it comes to civic engagement, Canada leads the world in the proportion of immigrants who become citizens. It's, after about 10, 15 years, it's about 80 to 90%. It's double the next country, Australia, which is 45%. 13% of our House of Commons is made up of immigrants, people who came here, found a house, got their kids in school, got a job, joined a political party, got nominated by that party, and got elected by people of diverse backgrounds. 13%, 41 of the 308 MPs elected in 2011 are foreign-born. No other country comes remotely close to those kinds of numbers. What parties are they members of? All parties. Every party has foreign-born. One of them is 100% foreign-born, the Green leader. She was born in the States, a buddy of Bill Clinton. But they also join the Conservative Party. Do you want to name the countries you know where the most conservative or right-wing party attracts immigrants? Have a little trip in Europe and find out how many immigrants are joining the National Party in France, and I could go on and on. They even join the Bloc Québécois. Immigrants come to Canada and feel confident enough to join a party that wants to bust up the country. Only in Canada would we actually, would that be something that could happen. Here in Toronto, the diversity of our city's leadership is lagging badly. Wendy gave numbers on this too. It's almost astounding. Last municipal election, we have half visible minorities, and let me tell you, City Council looks more like the Legion Hall up in my hometown of Walkerton than it looks like the subway or a classroom at Ryerson. Candidates of color, including mayoral candidate Olivia Chow, encountered overt racism on the campaign trail. It was outrageous. A range of initiatives are underway to promote greater diversity in our civic life, but certainly this last election is not one to be cheering about. Finally, I just want to end by giving you a brief glimpse. I'm kind of a half-empty, half-full glass that I'm serving up here this evening. Numbers that are not about the economy, not about political life or public attitudes. It's about private life. Indeed, it's about love. I actually did write a book called Sex in the Snow, so I know all about this subject. In 1991, 2.6% of Canadian couples were mixed unions. That's somebody, you know, somebody is outside, marrying somebody outside your own visible minority group. Same-sex or opposite-sex marriage are included, married or common law. So 1991, 2.6%. 2001, 3.1%. 2011, 4.6% mixed unions. Now, these are small proportions, but the trend is gaining steam. And among people in cities and people who are better educated and who are younger, the numbers are higher. 8.2% of young people are in mixed unions, or of 8.2% of people in Toronto are in mixed unions, and among young people, it's triple that number, nearly a quarter. I don't know what could be a better example of integration than mixed unions. And presumably, sooner or later, they're going to have kids. And then we're going to see, obviously, that integration is working because it'll seem common, and it'll be a very visible minority. So my point isn't that we'll someday live in a beige society free of all injustice. My point is, once again, simply that we've come a very long way from the xenophobic days of my childhood, when a Catholic and a Protestant getting married in Bruce County was an outrage for both families. And an Irishman couldn't get a job at City Hall. I'm sometimes told that my optimism is over the top. It's not in any way my intention to diminish the realities of discrimination, inequality that exists in our society today, but I do believe diversity is our strength. It is important to be honest about what's not working, but it also must be honest about what is working. We must learn from both to have a platform for making sound decisions about our road together into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.